Okay, so this is the third of three videos regarding the senses. And today in this video, we're going to talk about the ear and obviously the sense of hearing. So the ear, we often refer to these things as our ears, but in reality, that's not really what the ear is. This part is called the pinna. It is just an external ear flap. It's mostly cartilage with some skin and a little bit of muscle around it. Um, and its main design is to catch sound waves. All right. Have you ever seen somebody do this when they're trying to listen? All right. Well, what you're essentially doing is extending the size of the pinna and therefore catching more of the sound waves, and it allows you to hear things that are perhaps very quiet or being projected from a very great distance. However, the pinna directs the sound down through a tube through the skull called the auditory canal. And so the auditory canal then leads to what we call the tympanic membrane, which is sometimes known as the eardrum. The auditory canal itself is filled with fine hairs and sweat glands that actually secrete wax. It's believed that the wax itself is designed to minimize the effects of very loud noises. And it turns out that people who work in very loud environments oftentimes will have a great deal of earwax compared to, like, for example, your local librarian, who probably doesn't have nearly as much. Now, once you get into the skull and past the eardrum, you're in what we call the middle ear. And so that it starts with the tympanic membrane, which is just a very thin layer of connective tissue that vibrates when sound waves hit it, just like the speakers on your stereo might vibrate. All right, nobody has stereos anymore, but if you've seen speakers that are vibrating, all right, that same principle with your tympanic membrane. Just inside the tympanic membrane are three small bones, which are called ossicles. They each actually have their own names. They're the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. But their job is to amplify those sound waves. So the tympanic membrane vibrates with a certain frequency. That causes the malleus to vibrate with the same frequency, which causes the incus to vibrate, which causes the stapes to vibrate. And then that taps on an organ called the cochlea, which is actually part of the inner ear. We'll get to that in a minute. There's also a tube called the Eustachian Tube, which connects the throat to the middle ear, and it's used to equalize the pressure so that the tympanic membrane doesn't rupture. When you swallow, oftentimes you will feel that pressure change in your ears. When you go up in an airplane, you can feel it, or even if you climb a mountain into very high heights, and if you swallow, you'll feel the pressure equalizing. So this is what it all looks like. All right. I don't know if you can follow the dotted lines here and here all the way through. But if you do, this section in here is the outer ear, and this is the auditory canal. So the sound wave comes in here. It hits the tympanic membrane, which is located here. And then that causes the malleus, the incus, and the stapes all to vibrate. And they then tap on this structure here, which is called the cochlea. Whoops. Sorry about that. I'm still getting used to this wireless mouse. It's killing me. In any event, so that's how sound reaches the nervous system. Okay, the sound waves then go down through this long spirally tube, and they cause little hairs inside to vibrate with a certain frequency. Those vibrations are picked up by the cochlear nerve and sent off to the brain. Now, so the inner ear is not only important for hearing, but it's also for balance. But let's talk about the hearing part first. The cochlea, which is that long curlicue looking organ that we talked about a minute ago, uh, is vibrated by the stapes, that middle ear bone. It strikes the membrane of a part of the cochlea called the oval window, and that causes the fluid inside the cochlea to move in waves. Okay. Um, there are little hairs inside the cochlea that then begin to vibrate at the same frequency. And that's what causes the stimulation of the sensory nerves in the cochlear nerve. And that's what sends the impulse to the brain. Now, the pitch of your voice is determined by varying the wave frequencies, I'm sorry, not the pitch of your voice, the pitch of the sound um, that you perceive, that you sense, is determined by varying those wave frequencies. Um, and so if you speak in a very high voice, or you hear a sound in a very low voice, or a person speaking in a very low voice, you distinguish between those pitches by the rate at which those little hairs are moving back and forth. Volume, on the other hand, is determined by the amplitude of the sound waves, how much energy is behind them. And if you see the video, or have already seen the video on the action potentials, you'll note that the action potential for a very low sound is just one little action potential, then another, then another. For a loud sound, all the action potentials are exactly the same size, but if it gets very, very loud, then the action potentials are moving up and down right quick. Okay. Now, the inner ear is not just for hearing, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Let me try to move my ugly mug out of the way here. There we go. There are two other portions of the inner ear. The vestibule, which is located essentially in this general area, detects movement in the head, all right, in the vertical and the horizontal planes. So when you move your head forward or move your head to the side, all right, what happens is that there are little rocks in there, literally little rocks that move up and down. So imagine having a cube filled with fluid with little rocks in it. If you turn it on its side, all the rocks go this way. If you turn it back up, all the rocks go back to the bottom. And so those little rocks, when they touch and stimulate little hair cells in that chamber, that tells you what direction your head is in. Are you vertically up and down? Are you lying on your side? Are you, what are you doing there? So the vestibule detects gravitational equilibrium. In other words, it tells you which way is up and which way specifically is down. The semicircular canals detect angular movement, and the semicircular canals are located here above the cochlea at the top part, and they are arranged in 3 dimensions. I don't know if I can do this, all right, but if you hold your fingers like this, you'll see that each of the 3 fingers that I've got extended are at right angles to another. And so essentially the 3 semicircular canals are also at right angles. And so whenever you spin, and no matter what direction you spin, those semicircular canals detect the movement. And so that helps you to maintain your rotational equilibrium. If you spin in circles really, really quick, the fluid in those semicircular canals will keep spinning, and that's why you feel dizzy. But again, it's fluid. Sorry. But that fluid is moving hair cells, and those hair cells are telling you which way you're moving. Okay. So here is another Mr. Anderson video. Again, far better than this little mess that I've made for you. But I hope that you find these videos helpful. I hope that you're watching them, and that you're taking notes, and you're ready for everything that's going on. All right. So that ends my discussion of the senses. And I will see you next with a video on the endocrine system.